Guys, I've done something weird. I've just started Magic Arena all over again. But don't worry, I've just borrowed a friend's account. But to prove that I've started again, let's just take a look at what exactly you get when you do start the game from scratch. And maybe you can learn a thing or two about what you can do if you're just starting this new adventure. I've just built one from absolute scratch. So this video is going to do hopefully a couple of things. Firstly, it's going to try to inform people how to start playing the game from literally absolutely nothing. If we actually go into the collection, you'll see how few cards I really have compared to my main account. So if we look at not collected, you'll see it's literally all of the staples don't exist. Literally hardly anything because he's barely played. And it brings a tear to my eye to see how few cards he has, but he just doesn't like grinding. So he said, Josh, why don't you have the account and you can grind? And I was like, okay, let's do this. So when you just start out the game, you'll notice at the bottom here, you've got these three icons here with the value next to them. These are the daily challenges. You want to keep doing these over and over again until you unlock enough coins to buy more boosters, enter drafts, and then you can play drafts to get more materials, essentially. You've got all sorts of challenges here. Whenever you perform the challenges criteria, you get the unlockable rewards, and so on and so forth. So that's basically the main way of gaining money in the economy, which requires grinding. So if you haven't got time, it's probably not very easy for yourself, but it's the only way to do it for free. So you can see here that when you first start the game, they outfit you with a limited number of wildcards. But to be honest, because you're playing a format like Historic Brawl, which is the format I'll be concentrating on this video, it's not too bad because it gives you 12 rares and 4 mythic rares. So that's important because commanders that lead your deck will be at least rare or mythic rare. Of course, you're going to have some uncommon ones, but those are going to be most important. So in theory, you can make at least a handful of decks to start, and at least 4 mythics means that 4 of your favourite commanders can be unlocked to start with, and you can mix and match and use them in each deck. Something else I'd recommend is, when you first start, don't try to unlock the best cards across all colours. That's just going to take you forever. So concentrate on a few colours. I'll say 2 or 3 colours, because at least that way you can actually mix and match those rares between decks. So if you've got, let's say your favourite deck is blue, and then I would make a blue-red deck. So you could still use the blue rares, and then later make a blue-red-black deck to put those rares in, so it all folds into each other. So let's jump into some just light deck building. My friend who basically gave me the count says he really likes warriors. So rather optimistically, I jumped into the editor to see exactly what we had. And let's start from my process. So when you first get the game, you will get random boosters, so you'll have random mythics and rares that you already have unlocked. So first thing I did is I just looked at warriors, just for example, if I could spell that correctly. And then we should probably take the S off that because it's not going to yield. So if you know what type you want, go into that bar there. And you can actually press this magnifying glass here to change the way it looks, which is really useful. But then it brings up all the warriors you have in the deck. So pretty much I put almost all of them in. And because this is going to be one of your first decks, or even second or third, it doesn't really matter what goes in the deck first. You just want to shove it all into the deck. So you click, 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 click into the deck. So that would essentially be the template of your deck. That's going to be the very first few cards you put into your deck. And that's good because you're focusing on a theme, and having themes is really integral to the game because it means your decks get stronger. Without a theme, your decks are incoherent. But as I said, put loads of cards into your deck. As long as you like them to start with, that's fine. The game will automatically populate your lands with basics. And that's fine too, because we're just starting out. It's a brand new account, see how we can get. Something else I'll do is after you've chosen your theme is, where possible, obviously, you're not always going to be able to have the cards in that theme. I would filter by what you have in the rares and mythics, because another thing about the game is the rares and mythics, obviously the strongest cards in the game, so they should inform your deck building. Now, when you put rares and mythics in your deck, these don't always have to be on theme because the deck needs padding. It needs ways to hit your opponent that are going to be the strongest way to do that. And the strongest way to do that is with rares and mythics. And you'll see that although my friend starts from absolute scratch, he does have quite a few rares and mythics. And I played a few games just to kind of unlock. So once you go through all the tutorial videos with Sparky, who's a little sort of program to help you, create your first few decks, you'll start to realize that, oh, it's unlocking lots of cards, and it's quite generous to start with. It's like cocaine. Your first hit is free, and everything thereafter ruins your life. So that's exactly what Magic the Gathering is. It's a drug, once you get used to it. And so I've just noticed I've got a few cards here that I haven't added, which I actually unlocked after playing a couple games with this very basic deck. So eventually over time, what you'll find is you'll see new fantastic cards you want to add. And if it fits the theme, why not put them in? So we're going to go for Tovalar, which is a really good card to draw your cards. Arlene, which lets you flash in Planeswalkers. Halan and Elena, which lets you put counters on creatures to give them haste. And I've also noticed Rockfall Veil, which is a really powerful addition to your land base. When you first start out, I'd recommend going for about 40 lands exactly. So let's reduce this by 1, just because we've got 41. Okay. And as you can see here, if I'll show you the stats, it's good to have a lot of creatures. So 35 is quite high, but this is a creature deck. And remember, we wanted it to be predominantly warriors. It's just an arbitrary kind of theme. It doesn't really hold any power. Just do something fun that you might like. And then after all your cards are in, you'll try and do something called, well, it's just trying to basically eliminate the cards you don't really need in the deck. So as you can see on the top left, we have 103 cards, and it's not legal, so it has to be exactly 100, and it's 99 cards in the deck, and 1 is your commander. Historic Brawl is special because you can have a Planeswalker as your commander, so that's quite fun. In a regular paper commander, you can't, unless the card says otherwise, which there are a few, but we'll focus on this format. So as you can see, 103, so we want to cut these down, so I can now essentially take out the filler cards that I originally had. So these would be some expensive cards that aren't fitting on the theme, which just are a bit slow. And because they're so expensive, I think take those out and reduce the speed in which you can cast spells. And in a format like Historic Brawl, sadly, it is all about speed because you only have one opponent. And you basically get all the ire of your opponent. So after you've filtrated quite a bit and after you've got about 40 lands, you want to focus on having a nice curve. So a curve is basically, if you look at how many of a certain card you have at each cost. So the curve goes from 1 mana all the way up to, I don't know, 7 or 8 mana essentially. You want your curve to roughly look like this, to be honest. You want to have a lot of 2 to 3 drops, and that's because most people's spells in the game will win them the game by turn 5 or 6 when you're first starting out. I'd say there's a certain truth about the game that you probably should know. It's a fast format, Historic Brawl, so you need to be aware. In multiplayer, it can go on for much longer, but in one-on-one, you need to be aware. So once you realise that, and it informs your deck building choices, so you'll start to have more aggressive cards just because you want to reach critical impact and critical mass. Basically what that means is once you're able to cast 2 spells per turn, you're starting to realize the efficiency level of the game. If your deck has like 34 drops, you're only ever going to play 1 of those per turn pretty much. But if you have a load of 2 drops by turn 4, you're costing 2 spells or maybe 3 spells, and the more action you do, the better your deck's chances of winning will be. So this video should be an interesting kind of guide to what it's like for any new starter and what it's like to, build your collection and have a few games as you go along. So let's have a few games with the deck we've just created to see what the experience is like. If you've been on my channel for a while, you'll notice that when you get to as many hours as I've put into my account, things seem a little different. And that's for a few reasons. Firstly, the number of rares and mythics in your deck will dictate the opponents you face. Essentially, it's like for like. The more rares and mythics in your deck, the more rares and mythics in your opponent's deck. And some cards are something called weighted, so not every value is the same. You could have a card that weighs, let's give it an arbitrary value of 1, and that's just a regular power card. But there may be a card that's incredibly powerful and has a power weighting of 2, and that will increase the value of your deck. So let's say the total value of a deck would be normally 100. But some cards may make your deck power level 150, and then you'd face someone with a similar power level. And that's how I believe the system works, talking to a few friends. There's no actual technically hard proof of this, only of what people have said behind the scenes and so on and so forth, and from anecdotal evidence. But yes, you'll notice at this level that the decks you face could potentially be a bit weaker, but we'll have to see, because in my test games I had with this account, there definitely were players who used very strong commanders. It's just what's in the deck that seems to change. The speed at which people play at this level as well is very different. And we've just faced a werewolf on a turn 1, which is a rare, so we'll see how we go on. But this is what I'm trying to prove, that just because you've started out the game, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a hard time necessarily, because let's face it, any games that are competitive will always give you pretty much a hard time, because obviously everybody wants to win. That's just the way the game is. So Tovalar is just a really powerful commander, because whenever a werewolf hits me, they get to draw a card. And that's very important, because card advantage is what wins games a lot of the time. If somebody has more cards than you, they have more options than you, and more options normally means more ways to win. So they're deciding on what to cast here. If they cast a spell with mana value 4 greater, they get a counter on here. So it's unlikely they'll do that on turn 2. But if they do... Right, so they've given it hexproof before I've actually done anything. So I've been a bit mean, but that's just the way the stack works. So their spell won't resolve because ours happens first. So remember that. Let's go for the Antique Collector. Okay. So this is much better on a larger field, because it gives creatures you control perpetually, when they die, you may shuffle it into the library and investigate. It's a very interesting card. It kind of gives you a little bonus for things that die. So if you have a deck that has creatures that want to die for any reason, that's going to shuffle into your deck. However, normally those kind of decks want you to have the creatures die and go into the graveyard. So yeah, so I think we're going to go for Domri. And if they're smart, they'll block, because Domri lets us fight an opponent's creature. And so fight would use the power versus the opponent's toughness. And the opponent would use their power versus our toughness. So they didn't block. So we're going to make these two fight each other now. And it's important because trading with their commander is important, frankly, because it gives them cards. And we want to stop that from happening. So yeah, when this guy dies, goes into the deck, and we get a clue token. So my friend who I borrowed the account from, he plays regular paper Magic. He's played it for years now, but he doesn't like the grinding, as I said earlier, in Arena, because he just doesn't have the time. Sadly, I actually know quite a few people with that mentality. It's just me, he's an absolute addict. So yeah, I volunteered to have a grind on the account for him, which is of no issue to me whatsoever, because it's quite interesting to see how different the game is, as you can see. And I want people to not lose faith, essentially, because you can see that, you know, we've got a pretty decent looking deck here. It's not too bad. And yeah, we'll go for our own Tovalar, oddly enough, that we managed to draw. So they do have a Sure Strike, which means if they attack with the Hungry Ridge Wolf, we probably don't block, because they'll just be able to kill it in combat with a Sure Strike. So sadly, if they attack Domri, we'll probably just be losing him there. But we'll see what happens. It's not always entirely clear at this level, because there's a lot of other new people, I would assume, playing decks similar to the power level of this one. I mean, it is, I suppose, a little bit controversial, because in other video games, having an alt account or a Smurf account is a bit mean, because it means that you're trying to take advantage of your opponent's inexperience. But yeah, that's really not the intent we're going for here. So because Domri isn't as valuable as me drawing cards, yeah, I'll just let that go.
Oh, you haven't seen the last of me.
And yeah, we'll let Domri die. And that's because I really want to get more mana. But okay, we'll go for the Generous Stray here. Draw a card when it comes in. We really need some lands. Okay, so we do hit one here. Let's see if he would trade. Okay, so we get to draw a card as well. Fantastic. So they have 2 werewolves now, so they're going to manage to draw 2 cards if they swing in with both. But as you can see, what I'm saying, it's just because we're facing someone at this level doesn't mean their deck's not very good. It's just a lot of the time it's down to player actions. Okay, so another Hasty Wolf. It's a pretty good deck build. I mean, if it is budget, it doesn't really feel like it because there's a lot of common and uncommon werewolves that can be used to just power out the deck. Burn Bright. So they use an instant there in the main phase, but it doesn't really matter, to be honest, because it's, you know, we can't do anything to stop them anyway. So if we had something like Lightning Bolt, we could obviously use it to kill one of the commanders. So after this game, what I'll do, we'll go into the process of picking new cards to add to the deck to try and strengthen, and we'll go through some logic to see what makes sense. So we're going to take 10 here. That's actually a lot. That's just... yeah, let's just block this. So we only take 5 and then draw 1 card. Okay. And... okay, so we've got a removal spell. So we're going to probably use this to kill the Tovalar. And yeah, let's do that now. So annoyingly, they'll be able to 3, 4, 5, 6 recast them if they get a land. Yeah, it's a very powerful card. So if you happen to have one of these in your rare or mythic pool as you're creating a deck, it's a really good chance for red-green to just have a really solid starting deck. And annoyingly, I keep missing land drops, so we'll pass the turn, but yeah, we'll, as I said before, if we lose this, we'll just go through the creation process and see how we can strengthen the build. 4, 5, 6, 7, so they can recast Tovalar again. 5 damage, so we're going to use Intervention to protect the Tovalar. This is good for a couple of reasons. It stops them getting into... I mean, they could have another kill spell here. Be very unlucky if they did. But if they do, they'll be hitting us for 6. Destroy Artifact. Okay. I feel like we got away with a lot there, to be honest. And something like Tomb Shredder is an interesting card because it has haste. You think it's all about attacks, but actually it's a really good blocker because if I were to attack into them and they were, let's say, a 4-3, you'd assume my Tovalar would kill their wolf. But if they use this ability during the block step, then it would mean that it would be too big for the Tovalar to kill. So, okay, Shock's pretty good as well. But I think I really need to get a land. Okay, a human, so I can't even do that. Okay, we go for the Phoenix here. And let's attack because I really need a land. Would be nice. So they could block. Do they want to block? I mean, reducing the number of werewolves is fine by me. They've only got 1 wolf out, 1 card in hand. And we can recast Termical Phoenix, anything goes wrong. 3 damage. Okay. They have actually got a lot of removal spells for a very basic deck. So we're getting absolutely owned here. Opponent, are they going to swing in? I wonder. So in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have attacked with the Tovalar. Should have actually used the shock to kill the blocker. Then I would be able to draw a card. But okay, so they're not actually going to attack in. Looks like both of us are making silly moves. Okay, so that ability, obviously, just so you all know, this doesn't have to be done in their turn. This can be done on anyone's turn. Goblin Gang Leader. Okay, we've got some blockers now. It's a pretty good guy. Comes in with 2 1/1s. And we will decline this. So it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay X red, or X is its power if you do return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. It's pretty damn good. So basically you pay 1 red more than the power to get a creature that gets stronger each time. Pretty cool. Good thing this doesn't have trample, because it would be a bit annoying for me to deal with. Do they attack? Or do they just make it larger? And also, will we ever get a land ever again? They are attacking. You know what? You know what? I'm just going to triple block this. It's actually kind of annoying how powerful this gets, especially because we have a red-green deck, which means that we will struggle to deal with creatures past a certain toughness, because red cards can deal the numbered damage, but once you get to 4, 5, 6 toughness, it gets very difficult. And I guess we'll go for the Great Horn. This is so sad. Like everything I'm doing, I feel like I'm either making mistakes or playing suboptimally. Okay. But at least if they choose to attack, we can just block with a 3/4. And that's assuming they don't have yet another removal spell, which is entirely likely. Okay, Werewolf Pack Leader. So I really hope they don't use the ability here, because it doesn't make a difference. But as I say, it's a pretty damn strong deck, considering, you know, the bracket we're playing in. It's kind of crazy, to be honest. Domri? Use it to fight the... I think we use Domri to fight the werewolf... Oh no, we don't want to do that, because they can make this bigger in response. 5/3. But then we'll just kill a Tovolar, which is probably better. Although the Pack Leader can make itself big enough to draw cards, but... Yeah, let's fight the commander. So their Tovolar's going to cost 9 from now on. So I will say this, if you're attempting to do an experiment like myself, I would give yourself a lot of time, because players at this level do take a bit longer to obviously process the stuff. But it makes sense, because, you know, they just haven't played for long, so make sure you have enough time. Whereas my time is a bit... yeah, time's a bit scarce, because... why are they doing this? That's a weird attack. Oh dear. I feel really bad now. That was not a good attack, sadly. Okay. So we'll get some green mana. Let's go for this guy, and then we will kick him. So 6/4. So I think we will attack with both, and then I think I'm going to fling one of the creatures at the Tovolar, and that probably will be game, although we're at a level where you can almost fling it at their face and just win the game. But yeah, we'll just take care of the Tovolar here, so they can't draw any cards, which is mean, but that's how to win the game, and unfortunately for them. So yeah, I'm pretty surprised at what we actually have in the deck, considering, as I said, you know, our resources aren't that plentiful, but you've got Colossal Majesty here, which is really good power. The fact that it lets you draw cards on your upkeep if you have creatures with power 4 greater. Really good. And we'll swing in for 6. To be honest, I could have just won there if I just remembered the Phoenix trigger. Because it's got haste, it could have come in. It's a 4/4. That would have done 10 damage exactly. But yeah, opponent's a very good sport. And we can just swing in. We can even pay. And there you go. They can only block one thing. And it's lethal damage coming in. I have to say, the sportiness is really nice to see there. It's something that you don't really see at the high levels, you know. It's just merciless and ruthless. So, as I said before, we'll go into the deck editing to see the process of what you would do if you were trying to improve your very first deck. Alright, so see you there. So here we are back in the deck editing suite, essentially, and what you want to do is you want to look at what you think your deck did well and what it didn't do well, and then from there we can kind of add cards to the deck that may actually improve the, just how it runs. So something I would suggest adding is a couple of the Mana Dork elves that are in the game. So if you just type in elf, and it will filter by the elves you don't have, so you can add the Elvish Mystic and Lenore Elves, for instance, and then you can press Craft All, and that will add them to the deck. And these are good elves because, firstly, they're common, so they only cost one common wild card, so you can see it depletes from your resource here. And once you add it to the deck, you'll be able to take your Domri out to the battlefield on turn 2, as long as you draw one of those. So stuff like that, just pretty simple fixes. And what I would do as well is probably take out something like Gigantosaurus, because it's just 5 mana pips. And obviously this is all theoretical, every deck is different, but something like Gigantosaurus is probably better in a monocolor deck. And that's because getting 5 forests in a row is pretty hard to do if you think about it, because the deck has about half and half of forests and mountains. So in order for you to reliably cast this card, you're going to have to reliably have lots of green pips. So I would take this out. There is something else we can do to try and get around that. And that's increasing the efficiency of the mana base. So something I love to do is, obviously everyone's different, but you can press the colours of your deck and then press the land icon here. And what that will do, and then you have to press the gold circle as well. That will bring up all the dual lands available in your colours. Now, obviously this is probably the most important and expensive aspect of any deck. It's the land base, and it's probably quite controversial how, expensive it can be to add these cards to your deck. But one thing I would say is if you're adding any rares to the deck, you can't go wrong with the shock lands. They're called shock because when they come in, they deal 2 to you to come in untapped, or they just come in tapped. So probably add at least a shock land to make the deck perform a bit better. And let's just keep it simple. I guess we can go for the brand new Copperline Gorge, which is in the new Phyrexia, or will be 1 set. It's pretty good, so those will already strengthen your deck. Something else you can do is type in command and just turn off these filters here, and you'll see the command tower. And as long as you pick an addition you have, these arrows let you pick your favourite artwork of the card nowadays. You can press add there, and it will add to your mana base. You've got 43 now, so now we want to take 3 off. So just take off couple of basics to start with, and this is a very slow process. So then if you hit craft all, you can do it in batches. So I wouldn't recommend like adding 10 rares or mythics at first, because it will just go through your wild cards really fast, and it's just a process of elimination. So every game you play, you want to see what's in your deck that didn't work and take it out and find something that you think would fit this plan better. So something that Domri obviously would like a lot of smaller creatures to come out, maybe stuff with a bit higher toughness because he can make stuff fight. He's actually a really effective commander, to be honest. But yeah, it's pretty hard to kind of have a guide on every single deck. But yeah, if you're just starting out and you're following the processes that I've kind of outlined here, things are pretty good. So to summarize the deck building process, add the cards that you think will work together in a theme. And it doesn't matter too much. Pad it out with the rares and mythics that the game does give you at the start of the game. You can grind more resources to buy boosters by playing decks that meet the criteria of the daily quests. And then once you've had a few games with your deck and seeing how that works, go into the editor, take out what you didn't think was good, and then put in what you do think would work. And it's just a process of elimination, basically. So, after some trial and error, I'm sure you too will be able to succeed at starting to play Arena from scratch, essentially. But yeah, check out my other videos if you want to see my more fully powered decks, but also tell me in the comments below if you'd like to see me maybe grind a fresh account from the start again, and also tell me what you'd like to see, because there's just so much to cover. And it's more than one video's worth, to be perfectly honest, to see what can be done. But yeah, I've got a lot more tips and tricks that can be a bit more advanced, so tell me if you want to see more of those. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed this video. Did you know that you can help my channel by watching another one of my videos? Go ahead, you know you want to.